Kembali lagi di channel yang nggak tahu juntrungannya mau kemana ini, anjay.
Oke, filmnya sekian.
Sekarang gua mau makan sambil nonton yang katanya gue belum pernah nonton sih. Ini kocak nih katanya. Lihat nih makanan gua, mantap gak tuh? Nggak tahu nih berapa potongnya. Mungkin 12 atau berapa. Mumpung lagi ini sambil nonton, kita nonton bareng dah, nobar.
The Cost of Concordia, ship of dreams. It's been 8 years. I can still smell the buffets from their 5 restaurants. The casino and 3-story theater had hardly been used. The gym, the day spa, the sheets in her 1,500 luxurious cabins hadn't even been slept in. Cost of Concordia cost $570 million to build. And you could tell. You could really tell.
Pernah tahu gak cerita ini? Costa Concordia lo orang.
I remember it like it was just a few years ago. We had left Civitavecchia, a port in Rome, and we were making our way to Savona. It was day 2 of our 7-day journey. But that ship, she was cursed.
Oh my god.
When she premiered, the traditional bottle of champagne bounced right off the side instead of smashing. A bad omen, but I'm not the superstitious type. Nothing could go wrong on Friday the 13th of January 2012, on the 100th year anniversary of the Titanic, on a ship that's also only safety rated for 2-compartment flooding, especially not when you have a 5-star max-level captain like Francisco Scatino, a man who mysteriously rose from head of security to the position of captain within just a couple of years. He knows exactly what to do in case of an emergency. For example, when he caused this emergency in 2008, when he crashed into a port in Sicily. And in 2010, in Warnemünde, Germany, when he was steering a different ship and came into port too fast and caused another collision. I've got a good feeling about this. So let's set the scene. It's a beautiful evening. People are having fun on the slides, drinks at the bar. Antonio Magnotta is playing piano at the restaurant. Martin the magician is setting up for his show. And the ship is setting up for a little detour. It's called a sail-by salute. Basically, you get real close to the shore and honk the horn. The locals hate it, but the customers love it, and it's a tradition. Scatino, the captain, comes into the dining hall with a lady, Dominica Samorton. Remember this face because you'll be seeing a lot of it later. Scatino eats his dinner with her and socializes for a little while. Then he, Dominica, and the maitre d' finish up and excuse themselves. They're heading to the bridge. It's time for that sail-by salute. This time, they're going to get closer than ever. Just 1,500 feet from the island of Giglio. And how are they going to determine this distance? Well, of course, the captain is going to eyeball it. Apparently, it's not an uncommon thing to do. Scatino turns to the fella steering, his helmsman, Jacob Ruslibin. First interesting tidbit. Costa Concordia has hired Jacob from Indonesia at a rock-bottom price, and he's a bit of a newbie to the job. In fact, his profession hitherto...
Editannya saking sampah jadi lucu tai, ini ngakak anjir, kayak bener-bener ngasal banget bake.
A painter and a cleaner. It's his first time steering a massive ship, and he's very excited.
Kenapa dulu?
Itu poinnya.
Iya anjing. Enggak apa editnya tuh ngasal banget anjing, jadi lucu tai gue liatnya. Aduh, Rusli bin Helsman anjing ngeliatin ngasal banget, kayak bener-bener cuman dia ngambil stock image sih kayak kapten gitu, abis itu mukanya diganti terus ditulisin word art anjing di sini. Bangsat.
Excited. At least, we think he is. It's hard to tell because he doesn't speak English or Italian very well at all. Off to a good start.
Gue
The
pause
sec-
dulu. Lu lihat mesti anjing ini enak banget gak sih? Nashville, bro.
Itu banyak sih, Bu.
Gila ya. Tapi ini menurut gua ini normal apa ya? Normal food sih buat gua. Ini segini tuh bener-bener kayak biasa aja gitu.
Tapi segitu lu kenyang nggak?
Kenyang
Masih bisa
atau
masuk lagi,
enggak? Masih bisa masuk lagi. Ini gua masih ada nasi dan telur gitu. Gua masih ada nasi dan telur. Ada ya ini cuman ya jadi kremesan lah, ini kailan garing gitu loh. Kremesan gua lah gitu. Jadi kita play the video biar apa namanya sambil gua punya kesempatan makan lah gitu.
Second in command orders the helmsman to 290. Now, don't be confused by these numbers, they're just the degrees on a compass. At the same time, the captain whips out his cell phone and calls former captain Mario Palombo, who lives on the island. They chat about the safe distance to Giglio's shores. It's all very casual. Anyway, Mario says that the safe distance is between 0.3 and 0.4 miles from shore. The captain is going all in. This is not his first sail by salute, so he's confident in what he's doing. We're going closer than we've ever been before. The captain's eyeballing it again. New heading of 300, he tells the helmsman. Downstairs, Martin is about to cut his assistant in half. And of course, that means that there's already a lady inside this box. She's waiting for the cue, and then she'll poke her legs out. The captain is giving more orders. Pulling gently to 310. Increase speed to 16 knots. Going this fast is going to be a fatal error. But before we talk about that, let's talk about another big problem. Language barrier. Because at this point, the captain says 325, but the helmsman relays 315. So the first officer intervenes and he goes, no, 335, which is also wrong. And then the captain clarifies, no, 325. The helmsman confirms 325. Their poor communication has them moving at a much wider angle.
Kenapa?
COA.
Ntar. Ini kocak banget anjing. Saudara, intinya gue udah kirimin video ini kemarin, tapi gue belum sempet nonton gitu. Apa sih? Belum gue buka linknya. Gue cuma lihat thumbnailnya doang kan di WhatsApp. Katanya, lu kalau belum nonton dah. Ini tolol kata dia. Tapi kejadiannya beneran gitu. Ini bukan kayak cerita di rekayasa, ini beneran gitu. Kayak saking fucked up-nya sampai apa dengan penjelasan gini cuma narasi doang sama edit ngasal kayak gini tuh jadi kocak, tapi bener gitu loh.
Than they think they are. However, the captain should and would know this, except for the next problem, complacency about procedure. The standard procedure of a ship this large is for the third officer to give exact positional coordinates every time the captain gives a new directional order. But they're not doing that. 330, he says. The helmsman relays 330. The ship reaches 16 knots. The captain then turns to the second officer and instructs him to go to the left wing. That's these things here, and they basically exist so you can get a better view over the whole vessel. A few seconds pass, and then the mood starts to turn. Scatino notices white foam of waves breaking against the rocks directly in front of him in the distance. The Cost of Concordia, right now, is almost 700 meters closer to the rocks than it should be. Without deviation, there is going to be a direct collision. Oh, shit! Scatino immediately commands the ship to start turning away. 335. Not enough. The captain shouts, 340. The captain yells, 350. Now, remember how I said that accelerating to 16 knots was a fatal error? Well, that's because it's made this ship incapable of such a drastic turn. What they've got is understeer. Here's an example.
The front end is not working. You're turning, and you're just going straight. You want to go over here, but you're going to end up over here.
So despite the order of 350, right now the bow is still only pointing at 327. Not nearly enough to miss the rock. And oh no, it's about to get worse. That language barrier again. In these critical moments where every second counts, the helmsman wrongly relays 340. The captain snaps back, 350 starboard or we end up on the rocks. The third officer goes to assist the helmsman. Now, don't get confused by the orders from here. We're changing over to rudder instructions. The captain yells, starboard 10, starboard 20, and still it's not enough. Hard to starboard. That means as hard as it'll go. But at this point, even if they clear these rocks, they need to get the rest of the ship to swing around it. So the captain yells, midship, which centers the rudder. The bow is now less than 150 meters from Skull Rock. Port 10. But the helmsman only gets to port 5 before another order is given 2 seconds later. Port 20! They might just avoid disaster here, maybe. But then, oh no. One more time the helmsman cocks up at the worst possible moment. The helmsman goes to starboard instead of port, undoing the swing. 8 seconds later, he realizes the error and corrects, but it's too late. He has just turned a probable near miss into a sure hit. All they can do now is hold on as the bow of the ship narrowly passes by the rocks. Hard to port! The second officer yells, we're gonna hit! Collision.
Lu nonton gak sih?
Nonton.
Ini practically Titanic 2 gak sih?
Titanic tuh lebih...
Titanic kan dia hajar depannya kan? Bener gak?
Tapi kayak ini lebih awal gak sih daripada Titanic?
Enggak. Ini kedua setelah Titanic. Setelah Titanic dong ini.
Tapi ini bukan tadi 1911-an.
Titanic emang kapan?
Titanic tadi kok. Coba gue cek.
Tau gue ini Titanic ini duluan? Ini setelah Titanic.
Itu Titanic kan?
Oh, Costa ini tuh Titanic.
1912 anjir sama.
Ini tuh Titanic.
Ini 1912
Ngakak, berarti ini Titanic anjing.
Gue
Gue nggak tahu ini kenapa Titanic. Gue nggak tahu ya, maksudnya if it's true or not, kayak maksudnya masa se-fakta pede sih anjing Titanic. Kayak krunya ngasal, ada orang Indonesia anjing. Goblok. Anjir kacau banget sih, fakta banget sih ini.
Downtown, Nordtown.
Aduh, iklan bos.
It's day 56 of playing Russia.
We skip. Iklan. Iklan dari videonya, bukannya gue nggak YouTube Premium, enak aja. Gue YouTube Premium tuh.
Ad over. The ship hits rocks on the port side. A 53-meter gash opens up in the hull, and thousands of tons of water begin pouring in. A loud scraping and bang is heard by all passengers. At the helm, there's panic. Rumblings in the dining room. Martin awkwardly pauses his act as he's helping his assistant into the box. Meanwhile, the lady inside is trapped and terrified. There's confusion across the ship. All of the crew off shift come back on duty. All officers run to the bridge. Technical crews run down to the lower decks to assess damage. On connection with the rocks, they lose propulsion and slow to 8.3 knots. And they are now adrift. Close the watertight doors at stern. Enormous volumes of water are pouring in. So much so that within 29 seconds of collision, all 6 engines stop working through flooding. 22 seconds later, a blackout happens. Lights, electrics, the water pumps too, everything. The captain orders the helmsman hard starboard. This is the final position of the rudder before power to that too is lost. The Cost of Concordia, now without power, is drifting starboard, plunged into absolute darkness. A quick breakdown of the flooding. When the Concordia struck land, it tore open 3 watertight compartments. At first, compartment 5, which filled very rapidly. Then 6 more slowly, 4 shortly after. Then 7, 8 and 3. Modern ships are built to withstand 2 compartment breaches. These compartments especially, though, are a problem because they contain the engines and the electrics. These main generators give power to the whole ship. From propulsion motors to rudder to hotel functions, pretty much everything. When they went out, the ship was a functionless, sinking cage. A few seconds later, the emergency batteries for internal lighting and communications kick on. When the lights come back on, Martin has vanished. He's ditched the stage. And it caused a huge panic in the theatre, as passengers are trying to flee to their cabins and to muster stations. People already in their cabins come out and start putting on life vests. Staff rally and try to calm everyone down. Everything is fine. There's no need for vests. Please return to your cabins. The emergency generator starts. All of the watertight doors close except for door 12, which is jammed. The captain calls Pilon, the chief engineer, as the ship begins to list on the port side. There's water coming in? Yes, there's water. But where? The engine room. But a lot of water? Yes! There's water, you can't go down. Let's go down the other side. In a moment we'll start the pumps, I'll let you know. In the theatre, the whole magic box apparatus slides right off the stage and falls into the crowd, further increasing panic. On the bridge, an announcement is being prepared. They are going to lie to prevent a panic. Let's just say we have a blackout. The deputy chief engineer enters the engine control room. He confirms to the bridge that at least compartments 5, 6 and 7 are flooded. Announcements are made.
On behalf of the captain, to inform you that due to an electrical fault which is currently under control, we're currently in a blackout. Our technicians are working to resolve the situation and will inform you of developments as they occur. Thank you for your attention.
Coincidentally, at this same time in the restaurant, they're playing My Heart Will Go On, and it's very much not helping the situation. The captain calls the Costa Crisis Unit. Roberto Ferrarini. He tells the crisis unit that they've hit a rock, that they're assessing damages and that they are also in a blackout. The crisis office says to reverse the ship up onto shore. Well, how are you going to do that? You don't have power to the rudder, let alone the engine. Hoist the sails? Anyway, around this time, the wind direction creates a starboard list, and the ship begins to turn anyway, drifting right back towards the shore, which is a very good thing because you want the ship to end up as close to shore as possible. A panicked passenger senses that something is off. This isn't like any electrical problem that she's ever seen. Plus, there was a massive crashing noise and now the ship is tilting. So, she contacts her daughter in Italy. The daughter then calls the police, and the police call the harbour master. While that goes on, a conversation between Pilon and Ambrosio. The diesel is not starting. The captain asks the engine room, but where have we made contact? Thinking that the incoming water can be reduced. Captain, here everything is lost. The electrical panel, everything. They're saying at this point that the ship is going down. The captain calls Roberto Ferrarini again. Actually, 2 compartments have been flooded, but don't worry, the ship's stability isn't in danger. Wrong. Passengers begin going to muster stations on their own initiative. The cruise director says, "We have a lot of people at muster stations that I do not want to fall overboard. Do we make an announcement to tell them to go to the lounges?" Bozio says, "I think that's best." The harbour master from Livorno calls the ship. The captain tells them that we just have a blackout. How long has this blackout been going on? About 20 minutes. Have you asked passengers to put on life vests? It's just a blackout. I gotta go. The harbour master is suspicious. He says to his superiors that he thinks something more is going on. He calls a patrol boat to the area and asks them to look at the ship. Another problem. The fan on the emergency diesel generator isn't working properly. Pilon manually has to turn the thing on and off with a screwdriver so that it doesn't overheat and cause a fire. The captain is on the phone to the lower decks, asking pointless questions, like, is it still flooded? Yes it is. The captain is essentially in denial of the situation. The harbour master calls again. Finally, he says, the ship is taking on water through an opening in the left side and the ship is listing. He qualifies with, no one dead or injured. The harbour master asks if he needs help. Just a tugboat? When in reality, they need a full rescue. With 3 compartments flooded, the captain finally realizes that things are really bad, and they are not going to improve. The Coast Guard orders every available ship to the sea. Meanwhile, up with the passengers, the cruise director's assistant says, everything's under control. Please return to your cabins or hang about in the lounges, no problem. She said this despite knowing it was wrong and that it further endangered lives. Most passengers at this point, though, aren't listening to this nonsense, and they're busy figuring out how to abandon ship. Bang, 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 bang. Local television has already picked up the story, and they begin broadcasting live radio feed from the bridge.
Hey, Capo.
Captain, the passengers are going on board the boats. Okay, let them go to shore. So then general emergency? Wait, let me talk to Ferrarini. We risk the emergency generators that do not have cooling. It has cooling problems, 100 degrees. The cooling fan has stopped. Pilon calls the bridge and tells the safety officer they need to evacuate. The safety officer relays this to the captain, but after no response, he orders the engine room to evacuate on his own. The captain says, "No, stay. We're leaving." So what do? General emergency? The captain tells Ferrarini that he's abandoning ship. Abandoned ship! Another announcement is made.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. The situation is under control. Please remain calm. And at this time, proceed to your muster station. They're located outside on deck 4.
The Livorno Coast Guard calls again. The captain declares distress. The Coast Guard officially calls for rescue operations. They contact Pietro Mille, the helicopter base commander, who then calls in every available pilot as he rushes down to the helicopter base. Pilon shuts down the emergency generator for the final time. The first rescue vessel arrives. By this point, the lifeboats are already going. Luckily, the ship is very close to shore. Oh, perhaps too close to shore. The ship forcefully runs aground, creating an uneven center of gravity, and it begins heavily listing starboard. The captain issues a general emergency on board. The announcement to abandon ship is finally called and alarms ring out, and with that comes panic. And now that they're listing, with many of the lifeboats too awkwardly positioned to enter the water, there aren't enough readily available and they have to...
Sorry banget kalau audionya double-double karena mic gua mungkin nge-pick up dari speaker. Double-double ya tadi.
Audio YouTube-nya nggak ada.
Audio YouTube-nya nggak ada. Oh. Oh mungkin di recording ada.
Oh iya, mungkin ada ya.
Ya. Nanti nonton videonya kalau udah tayang. Aduh, gua pedes banget anjir ini. Udah 2 terakhir, tinggal 1. Tapi enak banget sih, gila. Lanjut.
Start going back and forth to the shore, picking people up and dropping them off. The patrol boats report to the Livorno harbour master that the ship has run aground and is listing heavily. So the harbour master asks the captain about it, and the captain says, no, the ship is still floating. In fact, we're trying to maneuver it onto the shore. They know he's lying. Hold on, I'm reversing it. Beep, 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 beep. The captain then says to bottom out the starboard anchor. So they drop out the anchors, but let out too much chain, effectively rendering them useless. The deputy mayor of Giglio, Mario Pellegrini, and tobacco shop owner Giovanni Rossi arrive at the harbour. They watch the scene unfold. As the first of the lifeboats arrive on shore, the deputy mayor takes the initiative and races to board one of the lifeboats, returning to the ship, and starts trying to find someone in charge. He gives up and starts helping passengers. Scatino tells everyone to leave and take radios, but not before changing out of his uniform and into a nice suit. Priorities. Dimitri Christidis and Silvia Coronica leave with him. The maitre d' and Sir Morton both get out of there. By this point, approximately 300 people are still on the ship. Mille reaches the helicopter base. The first helicopter, a slow-moving Augusta Bell, was already rising from the tarmac for the hour-long flight south. Bozio is the last crew member left on the bridge, coordinating evacuation. He then leaves to help passengers board lifeboats. The bridge is now abandoned. And then, the ship's black box stops working. Apparently there were technical problems with it. That means, from here, things are going to get a little foggy in detail. A while later, rescue helicopters arrive, but they're struggling to find the ship because they're expecting it to still be well above water. Passengers are scaling down the port side by ladder as lifeboats return to pick them up.
This is no joke. Oh my goodness. It was no joke, mi amor.
Passenger
Yes.
is not allowed to make a film movie.
I'm allowed.
Who say you are?
A second helicopter, a faster model, sets off. The ship stops heeling and comes to a final resting place. Now the Coast Guard calls the captain because he's just learnt that the captain has abandoned ship. The captain claims, no, actually I slipped and I fell into one of the lifeboats. Ooh, I'm a klutz. But now that I'm on board, I may as well head back to shore. DeFalco tells the captain to get the fuck back on board. And the captain kind of acts confused and then effectively refuses. So the captain makes it to shore. From here, we only have mainstream news reports to rely on, so it's not going to be super accurate. But they say that Giglio's police chief then finds 110 survivors on the rocks at Point Gabbianara. And among them is the captain. It's not known whether the captain helped anyone while he was there, and in fact, the police chief claimed that he just sat on the rocks and watched other people do the rescuing. A while later, a rescue boat picks up the captain and takes him to the harbour. He speaks to the police. He then finds the ship's onboard chaplain, Father Rafael Molina, and cries to him for about 15 minutes. Then he goes to the harbour master's office to receive probably the biggest dressing down of his entire life. Port authorities ask the taxi driver to take the captain back to his hotel. The captain takes the 30-second cab ride to the Bahamas hotel. According to the cabbie, he was beaten like a dog. He was cold and afraid. He only asked me where he could buy a pair of fresh socks. But then he perked right up again and gave an interview to a news crew. He told them that he was the last to leave.
The captain is usually the last to abandon ship. What happened, Captain?
We were the last to leave the ship.
All day Saturday, rescuers searched for people on the ship.
Gue cuci tangan dulu, ambil minum. I'll be back.
Aman.
Okay, I'm back. Let's continue. Kacau.
On Sunday morning, a South Korean couple is found in their cabin, safe but shivering. They had slept through the crash and woke up unable to exit their cabin. The last survivor, Manrico Giampandroni, was found with a broken leg. He was the cabin's service director. In the end, 32 people died. The final body wasn't discovered until nearly 3 years later, a crew member, Russell Rebello, and it's believed that he died a hero helping passengers off the ship. The Cost of Concordia was the largest cruise ship disaster since the Titanic. And then there's the ship. This is what happens to a 110,000-ton cruise liner when it's left half rolled over in the ocean.
Tuh, dia bilang tuh since the Titanic. Berarti ini abis Titanic ada ini, si Cost of Concordia.
Iya. Yang ini ternyata 2012.
Iya, 2012 ini.
Tadi gue baca.
Gila.
this isn't the end. It's just the halfway point. What most people know is that the Cost of Concordia had crashed, many dead, and that the captain abandoned ship like a coward. But there's a whole veritable spaghetti of details to untangle. Let's dive in. There they are. The deets. Blue box time. The cost.
Bangsat. Editnya ngasal banget anjing, dia ngambil apa footage dari apa PUBG ya itu. Goblok anjir.
Emang aneh-aneh aja.
Ini kocak anjing, internet historian. Oke, ini menurut gua nih worth subscribe sih. Subscribe free juga gitu. Apa gua mau nonton konten-konten lainnya dari internet historian, lucu aja gini. Nggak aneh kenapa dia subscribernya mau 4 juta, gila. Oke, lanjut. Iya. Apa saya akurat lah. Dia ceritain historian gitu. Tapi sumpah histori. Ini pelajaran histori yang menurut gua apa ya? Jadi nggak bosan lah gitu loh. Gara-gara editan sampah ini kapalnya diedit nih anjing. Main dikat terus dijalanin anjir, di videoin. Bangke.
Cost of Concordia was more than just a floating resort. There's a mall, a casino, cha-ching, cha-ching. This iron chest was full of safes and cash registers and expensive fittings. And there were plenty of gamers prepared to sneak by authorities and try their luck in the hot zone. Within days, police divers reported that valuable items, once seen lying around the ship, were now missing. High-end liquor, expensive furniture, dining sets, cash from the casino, cash registers, jewelry and display cabinets, safes, Japanese woodblock prints by famous 18th century artists, as well as the iconic bell, which hung from the bridge of the ship. It was never found. Who steals a big fuck-off bell? Even the server admins were getting involved. 4 divers who were part of the company contracted to refloat the Concordia were spotted on CCTV, sneaking out to the ship. A patrol boat was dispatched, and the men were caught inside the fancy suites with rucksacks full of stolen goods. The 4 men are charged with stealing and thieving and pinching. Later on, stolen as well as legitimate items found their way to Amazon and eBay. Chips from the casino, postcards, and cabin access cards became highly sought after souvenirs.
It even has a watermark.
Some Australian guy even made a listing for the ship itself, advertising it as buyer to collect. And although there were plenty of bidders, eBay pulled the plug. I know you want to see Scatino go to jail, and we'll get to that. But first, we have to talk about someone else. Domnica Samorton.
That was a close one.
There was speculation that she was on the bridge that evening because she was the captain's mistress.
Tense media speculation reports that her presence distracted the captain.
They both denied their love for years and maintained that they were just friends. Although she did later admit to the media that she found him handsome. And how could you not?
You so fucking precious when you smile.
But she says there was no romantic link between them.
Some people would like to believe, they want to know I have something with him. It's more interesting. It's like, some spicy in the story.
Miss Samorton also loved the spotlight, however.
Everyone! Oh, look!
And took several interviews. But as the pressure mounted upon her, she began making ominous threats to Scatino, saying he must confess, and that you have but 1 week to come clean. But things from here get weird.
Spicy.
Samorton is a bit of a wild card. In a subsequent interview, she claimed a helicopter came to the ship well before the other rescue craft to take away a package. Huh? And what was that package?
Ya, pokoknya intinya ini kejadian kedua ya berarti. Kejadian kedua abis Titanic. Terus ya abis itu orang-orangnya ngakak aja sih gitu. Kaptennya tolol, terus yang ini apa pembantu-pembantunya lah nggak kompeten dan kocak gitu loh. Jadi gue leave it to nanti kalau memang lu penasaran nonton sendiri deh gitu. Gue mungkin gak lanjutin sampai habis karena ayam gue juga udah habis gitu. Gua gue mules juga, jadi kita udahkan dulu sampai sini, sampai bertemu selanjutnya, bye bye.